be starting the second class for the expected questions on environment and biodiversity. Now the first topic that we would cover is the environmental protection. Under environmental protection, we will start with National Green Tribunal, the NGT, which is now in news a lot. Now this was established under the NGT Act of 2010. It is not bound by the procedures which are laid down under the Code of Conduct 1908. However, it is guided by principles of natural justice and environmental justice, which talks about speedy disposal of all the cases, and it should not take more than 6 months. Now, most of you are familiar with the ambit of NGT. So, it basically includes the forest area, it includes the protection, but there are certain two areas which most of you are not familiar with, and those include the Wildlife Act 1972 and the Forest Act 1927. Now, since these are the common areas which are covered under NGT, if there is a question, they won't ask the areas which are covered under NGT. They would definitely be a higher focus on the uncommon aspect that is here. These are the areas which are not dealt with NGT. So, for example, if there is a case related to wildlife protection, that won't be covered under NGT. So, all the cases which deal with Wildlife Protection Act and Indian Forest Act 1972 are not covered under NGT, and that's very important. Now, the next thing we would cover here is, we talked about the Green Tribunal, that's the NGT. Now, let's understand what's the difference between a tribunal and a court. A tribunal is less formal, it's less expensive, and it's much more faster to resolve disputes under a tribunal, because under a tribunal you say there is at least 6 months window that you give for any case to be resolved. Again, the members of tribunal have a special knowledge in their specific field, unlike the members of the court who have a kind of general knowledge of the law, but they do not have the specified knowledge on the subject matter, or they are not an expert in the subject matter in which they are fighting the case. So, tribunal is much more directed with people having more special knowledge onto the subject. So, most of the members of NGT have kind of special knowledge in cases related to biodiversity, environment, water, air and soil conservation. Now, the next is the ENVIS portal. Now, ENVIS is the Environmental Information System. This is a central government scheme initiated by the ministry, which has been implemented since 1982. However, recently under the Digital India initiative, there is a kind of unified portal that has been started for NVIS, and this portal talks about bringing all the centers under one head. So, it would be beneficial for the various government officers, research scholars and various institutions. It will function with the collection of five basic areas, that's collection, collation, storage, retrieval and dissemination of knowledge. The next is the Indian State of Forest Report 2015, that's 2015. Now, there are few important findings. First of all, the open area and the very dense area has increased. So, that's an important note that you must take for the Forest Report 2015, that's increase in the very dense area and increase in the open forest area. Now, 9 of the big patches of land which are more than 10,000 square kilometers occupy 40% of the forest area, and this time it has been increase in the mangrove cover which is covered under the forest area. So, as you can see, most of it is a non-forest area, and of that only this section, that's less than a quarter, covers the forest area, and this forest area is further bifurcated into scrubs, open forest, moderate and dense forest. Now, if you look onto the overall picture, the state of Madhya Pradesh has the highest forest cover in terms of area. However, in terms of percentage of the area to the forest cover, so the forest cover to the total area is highest in case of Mizoram, with 88% of the state having forest covered. Now there has been an increase in the carbon sink to nearly 103 million tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. Again, the forest of Tamil Nadu, Jammu Kashmir, Uttar Pradesh, Kerala and Karnataka have seen improvement. So these are the 5 states where you have seen improvement in the forest cover. So these are some of the highlights of 2015 forest report. Again, as you can see, the red patch shows the increase or the gain in the forest area and the blue patches shows the decline. So there has been a decline in the scrub and the non-forest area. However, there has been a significant gain in the dense forest and the moderately dense forest, and these are the 5 states, as we mentioned, which have gained in forest cover. The highest gain is for Tamil Nadu in terms of total square kilometers, followed by Kerala. So these 2 states have been leading in terms of the total forest cover. And as you can see, the 2013 and 2015 assessment, there has been an increase of nearly 0.64% of the forest cover in the region. The next is the green bonds. Now what is the concept of green bond? Green bond is similar to any other debt instrument which is issued by an entity to raise funds from the investors. That means all the money that you are investing in will go for some or the other green projects, and these green projects are mainly aimed at environmental benefit, either renewable sources of energy or low carbon transport. India aims to fulfill its nationally determined contribution by initiating the concept of green bond, and it will help India to reach the renewable energy target. The next is the carbon sequestration. Now this talks about how carbon dioxide is captured from the atmosphere for long-term storage. So planting of more and more trees would be a good way to do so. Again, what would be the best kind of trees that would help in best maximum carbon absorption or would act as a good carbon sink? So trees which are fast growing, which have broad leaves, which have larger leaves, and a kind of native species to that area would be among the good trees. India recently discovered teak has the highest capacity among all, which can absorb nearly 3.7 lakh tons of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere in its lifetime. Other popular trees are yellow poplar, silver maple, oak, chestnut and red mulberry. The next is the Compensatory Afforestation Fund Bill. Now this Compensatory Afforestation Fund Bill talks about the public accounts of the center and the state which work for compensatory afforestation. So all the additional afforestation would be regulated and the funds would be collected for the same. Now this has been established under the public accounts of India, that's again important, and the payments into the fund are include the net present value of the forest and the compensatory afforestation. So all these payments would go into this fund and it will get 10% of the fund would be collected and 90% of the fund would get they would get from the state governments. So the state funds would contribute maximum percentage in case of the compensatory fund. And finally it is used for regeneration of forest, for cropping more trees, afforestation, wildlife protection and the related infrastructure that is required. The next here is the National Hydrological Project. Now this is very important. The new hydrological project talks about or focuses on hydrometeorological aspects, and the previous projects focused only on 13 states. However, the new project focuses on the country as kind of overall country. It aims at setting up the National Water Informatics System and Water Resource Operation Management System. Again, 50% of the fundings would come from the World Bank and the rest would come as a budgetary support from the government. The next is the National Offshore Wind Energy Policy. It talks about using the windmills in the area of exclusive economic zone. Now this has been launched by the Ministry of Renewable Energy. Again, the National Institute of Wind Energy has been working for it. The target is to achieve 60,000 megawatts of energy by 2022. This could be achieved by having more power plants which would have a capacity of more than 10,000 megawatts, and there is no need for the diversion of the land to take place in these cases. The next is the Coastal Regulation Zone Notification 2011. This is again important. Now this talks about giving powers to the states for checking out the commercial development in the coastal areas. It aims at protecting the livelihood of the traditional folk community living close to the coastal areas, preservation of the coastal ecology. So India has a huge coastline, so this coastline should be preserved. Again, there has been the Bhavnagar case where you have the Mithivadi nuclear plant. This Mithivadi nuclear plant recently got the nod from the Coastal Regulation Authority and from the Ministry of Environment, and the idea is to build up a nuclear plant here at Bhavnagar. You have a Shailesh Nayak review committee that talked about the curbs on the coastal zone construction. It gave more power to the states to work around this. However, when we talk about the coastal zones, we have 4 zones that we have demarcated. The first zone talks about the area between the high tide level and the low tide level, and it talks about no new construction should be done except from the permissions of Department of Atomic Energy or pipelines. Then you have the coastal zone 2 that talks about the developed area, which is the built up city and the towns nearby. You have the coastal zone 3 that talks about the undisturbed area, that's the rural area which has no development and has a high tide level of up to a high tide level of 200 meters. And finally the coastal zone 4 that talks about the 12 nautical miles into the sea. So the area up to 12 nautical miles into the sea would be covered under the coastal zone 4. Now the next is the focus on the climate change. Now when we talk about climate change, there are 8 national missions that have been adopted. We will be working on these 8 missions one by one. So the idea is to mitigate the climatic problems and bring adaptations for climate change. So we will be talking about these 8 goals one by one. So the first is the National Solar Mission. This solar mission was launched in 2010. It targets nearly 20,000 megawatts of grid connected with solar power by 2022. Now this 2022 is a set line for most of the projects under renewable energy. The idea is to reduce the solar power cost. How can it be done? It's by long-term policy planning, more deployment goals, and a kind of more research and development activities in the field, and finally producing the raw materials and the components required for solar manufacturing within India. So it's kind of domestic or make in India formulation. The next is the National Mission for Green India. It is again one of the 8 key missions under the climate change panel. It aims at protecting and restoring the green cover, that's the forest area. So the forest area should not be decreased. Since you are maintaining the forest area, you are kind of using a decentralized participatory approach to work at a grassroots level. So it would be a kind of community development at a lower level that would be initiated. The next is Mission for Enhanced Energy Efficiency. So this is the third mission that we are talking about. It talks about 4 basic initiatives. So first is the Perform Achieve Trade Scheme that talks about to reduce the energy consumption in the energy intensive industries. The next is Market Transformation of Energy Efficiency. It talks about shifting the energy efficient appliances in certain sectors. So using more of energy efficient appliances would be a kind of initiative. The next is Energy Efficiency Financing Platform. It talks about financial demand side management in all the sectors by capturing the future energy market. And finally you have the Framework for Energy Efficient Economic Development that talks about developing energy efficiency systems for fiscal instruments. The next is the Mission on Sustainable Habitat. It talks about promoting more of green buildings, improving the energy efficiency of the buildings, managing the solid waste, and shifting to a public transport system. The next is National Water Mission. It again has 5 goals, that is increasing the water efficiency by 20%, promoting more of basin level integrated water resource management, focusing on the vulnerable areas which are overexploited, promoting awareness among citizens and the community, and providing a common database that could be available in the public domain. The next is Mission for Sustaining the Himalayan Ecosystem. Now this is a area centered approach. So you have focus on sustainable development, maintaining the ecological resilience of the region, continued support for ecosystem activities and services in the region. The next is the Strategic Knowledge for Climate Change. Now this talks about a network of the existing knowledge institutions. So again, the idea is to decrease the forest cover, change the policies for climate change, again work on the capacity building and improve the key climate processes for the region. The next is the mission for sustainable agriculture. It focuses on 10 basic goals, and these 10 basic goals are important because sometimes there is a direct question which mentions 5 or 6 of the goals and you have to pick up which of the following is not a goal. So you need to know the 10 basic goals that talks about improved seed, the crop seed, water efficiency, pest management, better farm practices, nutrition management, insurance for the agriculture, credit support, market, access to information and livelihood diversification. The next here is another concept that was recently released by IMD. 2009 till now was the year considered as the warmest year, which was 0.77 degrees more than the average. However, 2016 has become the warmest year now with 0.91 degrees Celsius above the average record of 1961 to 1990. Again, you had pockets of rainfall deficient regions which were below average in the northeast monsoon or during the winter. Now, IMD is an organization that works around the meteorological characteristics of India. Its headquarters is located in New Delhi. Now, this talks about the various areas of India. So, as you can see, Rajasthan, you have the flood prone area and the drought prone area as well. So, you have the map which marks up the various areas. So, you have the flood prone area, the area prone to cold waves, heat waves, lightning, and the deficient rainfall areas. So, these were the areas that were released by IMD. Now, coming on to the next topic, that is pollution. There has been a scheme, that is National Green Highway Mission, that talks about planting along the 1500 km of national highway. This was launched under the Green Highway Policy 2015, and it aims to provide green canopy for nearly 1 lakh kilometers of highway, and for that it aims to create 1 million youth jobs for this. Again, the afforestation would help in carbon absorption of nearly 12 lakh metric tons annually. It would be linked with the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme, so that more and more people or youth are employed in this project. And recently there is an idea to release a mobile app for the same. Now, the Bharat stage norms talks about regulating the pollution levels. So, there are already 4 norms that are there. India is planning to skip the 5th norm and move on to or jump on to the 6th norm that talks about automotive technology and innovation. So, these are the norms which standardize the vehicles for controlling the air pollution. The next is the air quality index. This is released by the Central Pollution Control Board, and it basically focuses on these 8 pollutants, that's the particulate matter, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen dioxide, carbon monoxide, ozone, ammonia and lead, of which particulate matter is important, and there has been a kind of color code that has been devised. Now, particulate matter, if it is 2.5, it is finer particle and it affects the lung. If it is bigger than that, it's 10, it can be directly inhaled and deposited in the extrathoracic cavity. If the particle size is less than 0.1 or 0.1, these are ultra fine particles and they pass directly into the circulatory system, affecting the body. Now, these are the various categories that have been demarcated. So, you have the category ranging from good to severe. These severe and red have been poor have been marked with red. Then you have the green category, the yellow category and the kind of moderate category. So, you have the different values for the different pollutant, the 8 pollutant that the CPCB has divided, and these 8 pollutants are ranked based on the quality. So, you have the complete table here. Now, this is important, this was asked in 2016 itself. Now, what is important to understand here is the pollution index is a function of 4 parameters, that is emission, effluents, the hazardous waste generated and the consumption of resources. Now, the red category, where you have a pollution index of more than 60, It includes the severe polluting industry with 60 industries like sugar, thermal power and paints. The orange category talks about pollution index of 41 to 59. These are moderately polluting with 83 industries included in it, mainly coal, washery and automobile servicing. The green category talks about a pollution index of 21 to 40 and it's a kind of low polluting industries with 63 industries included. And finally white category, which is below 20 under the pollution index, they are non-polluting, they include only 30 industries and they are exempted from any requirement of environmental clearance. Now there have been new standards for the gensets that have been released. Now gensets run on the liquid petroleum or natural gas or a combination of diesel with these or the combination of petrol with these. However, the idea is to control the air and noise pollution. So running on LPG and NG or in a combination has been notified for the first time. In all the three modes, there has been a 3-tier classification that has been adopted. Now different categories of genset have been released and they would be revisited every 4 to 5 years. There has been a kind of standard that mandates about the type approval and the conformity of production. So these two have been among the new initiatives that have been released. It also talks about the illegal imports of the genset and aims to improve the environmental standards. The next is the focus on flora and fauna. Now the list of all the endangered critically endangered and vulnerable species which were recently in news, we will be putting it up on the current affairs section at Examrace, so you can refer those because those are purely theoretical and you need to know those. However, we will understand the criteria given by the IUCN. So IUCN talks about the two categories which are extinct, that means they are no more in existence. So one is the extinct and the other is the extinct and wild, that means in the real wild area they are extinct. So if they are available, they are only available in zoos or national parks. The next is the threatened categories. It includes the 3 categories: the critically endangered, which are very close to extinction. Then you have the endangered species which are close to critically endangered species, and finally vulnerable, which are highly threatened and can if not conserved can be extinct. Then you have the near threatened and the least concerned. Least concerned are those which are abundantly available and you need not to worry about them. For example, let's say pigeon. So it's a kind of least concerned species. Now next is the 2 important species. The first is Xena. Xena is one of the flowers that has been recently grown in space and it's a part of a project that talks on microgravity concept. So these flowers were planted in a veggie lab on a international space station, and red, blue and green LED lights were used to artificially create a kind of sunlight for the plant and lead to growth of the flower. So Xena is important. And next is the Himalayan forest thrush. It is having a close similarity to the plain thrush and it has been renamed as alpine thrush. There are new species like the Himalayan forest species in northeastern China that have been discovered. This species has been named after Salim Ali as Zuthera Salim Ali, and it is the 4th species that has been discovered in India since independence in 1947. So with this we cover the major topics of environment for the upcoming UPSC prelims. We will be covering more relevant and important topics for the prelims. Have a good day ahead.